Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, the author of Chorus of 1,000, now available on Amazon. Here today to talk about the first story, Tower of Babylon, in Ted Chiang's story collection, Stories of Your Life and Others. Ted Chiang is an author that I've been meaning to get to for quite a while now. And so I pulled the trigger, got the first collection of his, and started with the first story. So, Tower of Babylon is the subject of the story is, as that name would suggest, it's the old mythical tale of the Tower of Babylon. This tower that appears to reach into the heavens. That kind of feeds through the Euphrates River within the city of Babylon. Now, from the onset, as we were getting into the story, I was like, okay, I am reminded, at least in part, of the stories of Jorge Luis Borges, in that it kind of touches into an ancient mode. That's at least what I always think of when I think of Borges. It's been a while since I've read him, so that might be an unqualified connection or leap in logic. I may be way off with calling it similar to Borges, just in how it's set up, but I think also in the execution of the story. Now, of course, going into this collection, I was assuming things would be science fiction, but they're not. I mean, it's almost science fiction. It almost isn't. It's just this borderline mythical tale. So we follow this character named Hilalam. I'm not sure, I could be butchering the pronunciation, who is from the land of Elam and traveling to Babylon, and he is going to. There are a group of workers at the top that are working to get into the vault of heaven. They're digging their way through the vault of heaven. And the story opens with a very interesting, just, something that becomes, excuse me, something that's certainly more relevant as the story moves along, which is if you were to lay the tower down, let me just find the direct quote here from the beginning. Were the tower to be laid down across the plain of Shinar, it would be 2 days' journey to walk from one end to the other. While the tower stands, it takes a full month and a half to climb from its base to its summit, if a man walks unburdened. But the men do not walk unburdened, and nor does anybody when, in that respect, they are reaching for God. That is something that kind of plays throughout this story quite a bit. This ties back into the universal, in that man has always been striving to reach God. We have our different ways of reaching God, or wanting to reach God, wanting to live longer, wanting to push out into the stars, into space. This is that desire is encapsulated here within the Tower of Babylon, kind of a direct, getting into heaven, getting, and of course they think about if they're able to be in the presence of, and in this book the deity is directly referred to as Yahweh. If they're to be in that presence, that's kind of a big, it's kind of in the subtext, it's not really spelled out, kind of their desires, what they would do, but they would certainly feel it. And there's also the fear too of what they refer to as another deluge. Of course, if anybody is familiar with the book of Genesis, of course there's a great flood in that covers the earth, and that's where Noah's Ark comes from, the covenant. And this is directly referenced, and of course that's the big fear, is as they're digging further into the vault of heaven, that they're going to find the reservoir of water that's going to then come and perhaps create another deluge. And so they have things in place to make sure that they're able to seal the hole or the site back up, but before it happens again. And so a lot of a lot of the story is spent with the characters getting there slowly but surely as they make their way up to the top of the tower. And they meet some people along the way, people who say, they were born in the tower, and they have no desire to walk the earth. And there was a great visual moment just where they realize that because they're above the mountains, the sun will, the day will be longer for them. The sun will set later, and that's almost eerie for them. And there are talks of when stars crash through the tower, and would it offend Yahweh if they start kind of pillaging this star, if it's a meteorite or whatever, for resources, would they be punished for that? So obviously this story, if it's able to tie back into the field of science fiction or into today's world, it is directly in that leap of men wanting to be godlike, to have great powers, or to be able to tap into the essence of, whether it be of creation, of the idea of eternity, or whatever that might be, because everybody has different desires that they do in regards to something like that. And of course, as I was thinking, I'm like, okay, they get to the top. Is this going to also tie in to Icarus? Where you fly a little too close to the sun, you get a little too much towards the source if you're really digging into the vault of heaven. And so there's that essence of magical realism within this. I mean, that's obvious given the premise of the story. But again, the themes that I've mentioned, that runs a through line, and that's what I believe what Chiang is going for when it comes to this story. And I might check his story notes real quick. I haven't looked at these yet. The story was inspired, Chiang says, by a conversation with a friend when he mentioned the version of the Tower of Babel myth he'd been taught in Hebrew school, but which meaning that the tower would take a year to climb. The original legend is about the consequences of defying God, but Chiang was captivated by the audacity of such a vision. The characters rely on engineering, but yet they can use those skills to try to figure out what it all means, what their role in everything is. So I'm going to get into a little bit the ending of the story, because that I think is crucial to add to the discussion. So spoilers for the story from here on out. When Hilalam finally, as he's swimming, as the water's coming down, and he swims into the cavern, and he comes back out into the desert. And it's this realization for him, at least from his perspective, that it's almost like a cylindrical thing where, and he notes it to where two men could be standing right next to each other, but they seem so far apart. The idea of heaven and earth seems so far apart, but yet it's with us, either if that's a comment on a humanist perspective of self-reliance for a species, not relying on a deity, but but there are those moments that really make you step back. And if it's let's skip ahead to the end of the story just to find how directly what he mentions. It was clear now, this is the end of the story, why Yahweh had not struck down the tower, had not punished men for wishing to reach beyond the bounds set for them. For the longest journey would merely return them to the place whence they'd come. Centuries of their labor would not reveal to them any more of creation than they already knew. Yet through their endeavor, men would glimpse the unimaginable artistry of Yahweh's work. In seeing how ingeniously the world had been constructed by this construction, Yahweh's work was indicated but his work was still concealed. Thus would men know their place. That's always a big thing, of course, when you think about it. The more we learn about the universe, the more advances we make. Is there a Tower of Babylon for ourselves that we will hit? Is there that heaven vault that we will hit that we ultimately can't really pierce through? Is there a limit to our understanding of the universe? And there probably is, because we, after all, are three-dimensional beings that can only perceive things in that way. We can only perceive time linearly, as opposed to the tesseract nature of what we know time to actually be, but we can't perceive it. Where the past, present, future, where everything is happening kind of all at once, or it has happened, it will happen, that sort of thing. But it's interesting food for thought. That's where the story leaves me with. So I think in terms of a rating, I'm probably leaning more towards a 4 out of 5, but definitely a strong 3 out of 5 for me. It's just because it takes a while to get there, and I think I'm getting more from the story just now, kind of dissecting my thoughts on it. So, but it's a very strong story, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the rest go in this collection. So, Tower of Babylon, have you read it? Let me know what you think, and as always, I will see you guys next time.